This picture of Robert Altman, it's a great photograph. It shows a very troubled soul.
That picture of Robert Altman was taken during rehearsal for a play that I was doing. It was the last play that Arthur Miller had written called Resurrection Blues. None of us knew he'd had a heart transplant. He had a heart from a young girl. He was dying, and he knew it. It was on a very cold stage where we were rehearsing, so he was covered up. He had his hat on. He wore leather gloves inside the building. It was one of those cold English winters. I feel it's a very intimate photograph because he shared that with me. He shared what I feel was his fear, you know, the inevitability, you know, the consequence of life is death. We don't see the wall that we're all going to crash into, but, you know, eventually I guess there comes some moment where we realize that the end is near and we're going to smash into that wall.
When did he share that with you?
During rehearsals. This is only about 4 months, 5 months before he passed away.
Did you know that before you took that picture?
I knew that he wasn't well. I knew that he was just too frail.
Because that picture to me really says that there is fear there, but there's also like this trust.
I agree
so
with you.
He gave you a little preemptive window there, a little message.
I'm Mark Seliger, and this is Capture.
I love this Steve, and I love your Stephen Colbert.
Both of them are great subjects. I photographed Steve Carell a couple of times. He's just a pleasure to work with. He's pretty much up for whatever, and he turns even like the most boring thing into something hilarious. He's got a great sense of humor. And so many comedians are very difficult to photograph because they're very different and they're not really very funny in life. They're actually rather serious and a little bit more reserved. I said, Steve, I have this idea with tape. You know, I didn't tell him beforehand, obviously. And then just whipped out this roll of tape and went like, and he was like, are you sure this looks good? Do you think this looks good? I was like, looks great. Sometimes you have to wait for the publicist to disappear to pull out your best ideas. Stephen Colbert was also a very fun subject. It was kind of a collaboration. I don't know who came up with what ideas, but I photographed him as a vampire. He was eating money, I think, at some point. We built a little set so he could look like Mount Rushmore with people climbing over his face. We had a bald eagle. He was walking a bald eagle on a leash. And it all ended with him in his suit, but his suit completely torn up, looking like a homeless man pushing this shopping cart full of books and a bunch of trash, and he's just pushing it down this like lonely highway.
Kind of a shocking sounding image, isn't it?
I think we have very similar sense of humor. Your pictures, sometimes I think like, I wish I had that idea. It happens to me all the time. So I think our pictures are sometimes very close.
Yeah.
Our aesthetic is not that different.
I think your portraits have a lot of you in them. Kind of a kindness and an honesty and a revealing aspect to the way that people look at you in your portraits. People let their hair down a little bit with you in a way which you would normally see. Is that a reflection of yourself?
Yeah, I mean, people that I'm interested in photographing are people that I like. I only took 2 pictures of Giancarlo and only 1 picture of Lara Flynn Boyle. I was going to say because I'm cheap, but it's because I grew up without money. You know, I'm the youngest of 7 kids. My dad was a drive-in theater manager. It's just, I know that when I push the plunger, that's an expense, and that I know that I'm going to have to make a contact sheet, you know, develop the negative, and then make a print, you know, that all of that's money. So I don't usually push the plunger on the Rolleiflex unless it's a picture that I know that I'm going to like. There's something that happens with a Rolleiflex, the relationship between the subject and the camera, that I think is very special. That they know that that's a special camera. They know that there's been these really wonderful, amazing photographers who've used the Rolleiflex. And I think that they open themselves up to the camera.
I was hired by National Geographic magazine to photograph twins. I got so many comments on these photographs, photographing the twins in my close-up style, rather together, separate one by one, and then allowing this comparison, you know, because my pictures are so static and always the same angle, same lighting. For the first time, people felt like they could really compare the similarities of twins and see what they have in common, what they don't have in common. Now I'm doing a whole book called Identical, which will be portraits of twins, but also of multiples. I photographed some identical quadruplets. There's about 6 or 7 identical quadruplets in Northern America. They have a twins festival in Twinsburg, Ohio every year.
Was it on the 22nd of February?
No, it's the beginning of August. I'm going back there this year. It's a kind of a weird experience seeing twins all day. You feel like you're seeing double. It is slightly
You feel left
disorienting.
out.
You feel left out, yeah.
Guess what's next, Martin?
Tell me.
You tell me, Matthew.
I'm guessing that there's a fishbowl with some little pieces of paper in it, and this could be a moment when we reach into it and ask each other random, unspecific questions about our lives.
Sorry, Matthew. Why don't you can ask Martin a question. Let's just get him right in the hot seat.
I get to ask this to Martin.
Yeah.
This question is for you. What's the greatest change in photography in the last decade?
The possibility of documenting real life, that everybody's turning into photographers and photographing scenes around the world that normally don't get any news coverage. You know, that people are taking pictures in Iran with their phones on the street and show protests and are able to share them with the world. I think it's a very powerful tool that will hopefully in the future also keep us in touch with what's actually going on around the world, because the media coverage that we see on television is only one side of the story.
It's amazing reality, isn't it?
Yeah, and to be able to share that via the web, to be able to give a perspective that people, I mean, I remember the first time I went to Ireland, you know, and the perception here in America was that the whole country was under siege, you know, that the IRA was blowing things up and the whole country was on fire. And I landed in Dublin expecting to see this kind of violence and burning buildings, and they said, no, man. He said, it's probably less than 300-400 people, you know. But the way that gets magnified through the news is that the whole country's in turmoil and people are suffering and starving to death. That the potato famine is still going on, and in fact, it was just a pimple on an ass.
Well, thank you guys very much for coming by and visiting. It was fun. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for enjoying this fishbowl too. I haven't done a really amazing photograph of my mother as she's gotten older. There's this like lovely, honest way that she's aged, and you know, I've photographed her maybe 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and did a portrait of her, but I need to do like the quintessential picture of her, just to have that. There has to be some part of that documentation that I take and move on.
To quit your job and live the life you've always dreamed of?
You're really living the dream, I would imagine, the expat dream.
I feel more free here than I do in the States.
This is it, man. This is the life.
Join me, Savannah Jane Buffett, as I follow Jameson Whitbeck, a native of Vermont who dreamt of building wooden boats, and after college did just that. It wasn't long before he moved his wife and kids down to the Virgin Islands to become a charter captain of his very own handcrafted catamaran.
First time we moved, we had, no money in the account.
1, 2, 3.
I think there's advantages and disadvantages wherever you are. It's just a trade-off, and you choose which ones you want to live with.
So this is what it's all about, right? You get to take your kids down to the beach.
Absolutely. Congratulations on making your life worth living.
Yes.